we've got Gerard from Wisconsin, he, him, who's got some questions about morality and objectivity, I'll say. Gerard, do you want to clarify what you're asking here?
Yeah. So it's just been something I've been like thinking about lately. Because like in a lot of these calls, especially when it comes to morality, like the big kicker is like, oh, you don't have some objective morality system. And I've just been tossing around ideas. And one of the things is like, what if we define? Because like, I mean, definitions are important. And what if we define morality as value? Because a lot of like moral decisions, that's what I feel it comes down to. Like,
what do you mean by value?
I'm getting to that. On
Okay.
the topic of abortion, what do you value more? Do you value the bodily autonomy of individuals with a particular organ, or do you value the potential life form that is being created? Like, which one do you value more? And so if we can agree, like, because once we have determined, like, okay, I value this proposition more than that proposition, there's some hypothetical optimal course of action you can take.
I get what you're saying, but I guess my question would be the same, is what do you mean by value, right? Like, so to me, when you're saying this, there's some implicit, you're sort of assuming that there is like something that makes option A more valuable than option B. And I guess my question is, what do you suppose that is? What are you proposing that is? Because, yeah, it's not clear to me.
Yeah, in a lot of the conversations, like they throw terms like well-being, happiness, and health, and right. I think if we just like bypass that and go like just drill down to like, okay, what do you value? Do you value a society where you don't have the government telling you what you can and can't put in your body? Okay, well then if you do value that, then you can vote certain ways and you can determine to a rough, like, there's going to be some wiggle room and some gray areas, but you can determine like, okay, well, if we support this person who is like for abortion and we don't support the person who's not, it's like, that's clear that clearly one option is better, objectively better than the other towards getting that value target.
So hold on though. Like with this, I still fail to see how we've moved beyond subjectivity into objectivity, because now all we've done is we've taken something subjective and we've just given it more subjective parameters and just labeled it as this is subjectively what is moral to you. So I'm not quite sure how this is moving forward in the discussion. Maybe you can clarify a bit more.
Yeah, no, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to call in, because like it's just something I'm working on recently. So say, get really like abstract, like say you value the continuation of the human race. There exists some hypothetical like series of actions we can take as a species to move towards that goal. But there are also actions that we can take that will objectively move us away from that goal. And so it's kind of taken the whole...
But I think the disagreement... But the disagreement that I think people have in these sort of discussions is not like the disagreement is what the goal is, right? No one is really arguing that like, oh, some things, like some actions get you closer to some goal than others. Like I think everyone would sort of agree to that. And in that sense, option A might be more valuable than option B because option A gets you closer to whatever your goal is. The thing that people argue about is what the goal is, right? And that's the thing that like causes moral disagreements. So how
Yeah,
does
and that's
spinning this in terms of like value solve that problem? Or maybe you're not trying
because
to solve that problem.
because like if you so irrespective of your personal opinion on how you get to hold on, let me start over again. Because I know what you're talking about, and this is kind of like what I'm thinking around, is trying to circumvent that like, oh well, I value different things. It's like, yeah, that's fine, but it's like if we both value like a functioning supportive government, irrespective of our feelings, like we can be left, right, irrespective of our feelings, there exists in this hypothetical abstract existence, like not literal existence, but there's a hypothetical ideal set of circumstances and actions that we can objectively take that will objectively get us closer to that ultimate goal, the ultimate value of a better government.
So that's assuming that we have the same goal. We have to enter with that assumption then, because if we can't agree on the goal, sure, the steps to getting to a certain goal may be objective, but we still haven't moved into why we would all agree on the goal. So I think that's where we're both coming from.
Yeah, you're sort of like you're saying
No,
if we agree that XYZ, but a lot of people don't agree on that, right? That's the whole point. So like if you're talking about the abortion debate, some people would say, I think it's like if we agree that it's that we want people to be able to decide what to do with their bodies, some people go, whoa, I don't necessarily agree to that. I agree to that within like certain parameters, right? And maybe for some people, those parameters include you can't have an abortion under any circumstance. So I don't really see how this gets us past moral disagreements. Is there a way that like what does like framing it as a value change?
because in my opinion, it kind of circumvents a lot of the things that I hear a lot of like religious people say. For example, like there was one conversation I remember a while back. Roughly, it was, I think it was Matt saying something like, "We value," or hold on, brain fart. My brain just reset.
Yeah, no problem. Like so let me ask you then, Gerard, is this a means versus ends question? Like you're saying that you think that people would agree to like the goal, but they don't necessarily agree on the means of getting to that goal? And you're saying that like, well, if we look at it as values, then we can circumvent this question of like, are we doing bad things for good reasons sort of thing? Like, is that what you're going for?
Not necessarily, because I'm fairly confident the whole ends justify the means is not a morally good thing. Because, you know, like the truth has no fear of inspection. So if your cause is just, then if you have to utilize underhanded tactics, then, well, I mean, either A, you're in an oppressive government, or B, maybe your ideals aren't as pure as you thought they were, if you're willing to, like, say, sacrifice people for the cause.
I mean, I don't know. Like my personal opinion, like I'm kind of a utilitarian in a lot of senses. Uh and in that I sort of agree with a ends justify the means, you know, just to a certain degree. Um
Mhm.
I don't know, Ben, what's your take on this? What do you think?
This is a rough one. It's still all very subjective.
Yeah.
And it's I would agree with being more utilitarian in the sense that, I mean, for what we do, there are times when, as a physician or as a surgeon, you have to harm somebody for a better outcome. Like
Right.
surgery is not a comfortable thing, but sometimes it is necessary to do greater good. But again, it doesn't define what that good is, and that might be different for different people. So it just I'm still having trouble with how subjective it still is.
Yeah, it
So, and I
seems to
don't
me
know
the
if we're gonna
problem
move
is
past that.
yeah, it seems to me the problem is that we're having trouble getting people agree to what they should value in the first place. Once they agree to value the same thing, then then we don't have a disagreement, but that also doesn't make it objective, I would say.
Okay.
You can
Yeah, I
take
mean, it's
as you I think are alluding to, then you can take objectively correct steps towards achieving that end, right? Maybe that's what you're going
yeah,
for.
maybe.
But I
It's just
but I don't yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Gerard.
I'm. It's it's just like this. It's the thing that I've been kind of like exploring, like this hypothetical, uh, objective kind of goal, or not goal. Guide, step by step process. Like chess is used a lot. I'm
Yeah.
trying to like I'm just trying to bypass some of the language, but well. Let's set that aside. How do you feel about me defining morality as like kind of value? Like, is that off, or how do you feel about that?
Hmm. Ben, what do
Because
you think?
I
I feel like a lot of the times when we're talking about morality, we're talking about like what we value, like human flourishing, bodily autonomy. Like we value these things and we don't value the opposite.
well, I don't necessarily have a problem with saying that value is a component of someone's subjective morality, but again, that is going to be something subjective. So if we as a group subjectively say that we value um people being alive for a longer period of time, we could agree on certain things being moral or ethical, but that relies on us agreeing on those terms. And
Mhm.
I do think if you're using it in that sense, I don't quite see a problem with it. However, I don't quite see the utility in switching the language from moral to value. I think they're along the same concept, but I do wonder if there are cases when using value like that could be problematic in terms of especially thinking back to um, ICU capacity during COVID, we ran into this issue with value being thrown around as who gets a ventilator being what value do they bring to society. And I think there are points when value can be a good metric for us to start agreeing on things, but it can also be problematic because once we start assigning specific value levels to things, um, we can actually do more harm in different ways. And I don't know what you think about that idea.
Well, let's talk about like what you said, like health. So if we value health, there are objectively things that we can do that will move us towards better health and away from worse health. But
Which sounds great when there isn't conflict, right? It's great when we have
yeah,
full availability of resources and full availability of treatments for people to where it's unanimous, yes, this is the best way to go forward. But with something where we had a conflict of we have two options for this person and they're both awful, this one might be marginally better in this way, maybe cost or reduced risk of complications, and this other one might have some disadvantage in those ways, but a advantage in a separate way. So when there's conflict and both can get you to the same level of health, how then, if we're using just value, how then do we decide between that conflict?
Well, I would imagine like basically it'd just be nested values, like values within values. It's like, okay, we're valuing health. Okay, we've come across this roadblock. Now we have two choices. We can either like do something that's going to be prohibitively expensive, or we can do like just enough. They're going to be miserable. And like at that point, yeah, it's kind of a gray area, but like you could objectively still like, okay, this is going to be prohibitively expensive, but this is going to be better for their health. So in that regard, in the value of better health, this is the better
No,
one.
but let's say they both led to equal health outcomes. Let's say they both led to equal health outcomes. Then how do we decide between the options?
Well, then we go down to the next nested value within that. Like, okay, we have two options. One's prohibitively expensive, and the other one, I don't know. Maybe it's new. Maybe it's risky. Like there might be some side effects, not necessarily like deleterious side effects.
Yeah. So this
like
would still be, if let's say we present a patient with these two options and say your benefit is going to be the same with both of them. It's still going to be a subjective decision, like on their part, what the best option is, right? They're subjectively going to decide this one's better versus this one, but somebody else might say, no, this other one's better because of this reason. So we're still subjective here.
Well, yeah, but that's it's like the nested value. It's like, okay, we basically, okay, these two options are equal. So like there's no really better option, and so we move down or up. I don't know like what the correct terminology.
So what I think you're saying is like, well, if your outcomes are the same, then you would go down to like, what are the person's preferences with respect to this other outcome or this other end goal or something like that. I just don't think that it helps.
Yeah.
And I think that like so what it seems to me that you're doing is you're trying to take the right and wrong out of morality, or you're trying to make it more like a calculus, like something you can do like, oh yes, well, like I don't know if you've seen the show The Good Place, but where it's like, oh yes, like mowing the lawn for your elderly neighbor, that's like plus 50 points. That's like the value associated with that action. And like, oh, you were mean to this person, so that's negative 25 points. And that's the value. I don't know, like I understand, again, as like a utilitarian, I understand the attraction of doing that like moral calculus and being like, I can figure out the answer to every question as long as we have like a like anchored goal. You can find out like the like how good an action is, or how or which action is the best action if we have enough knowledge and we know what our end goal is. You can like calculate it like math, and I find that very attractive as well, and I think that's what you're getting at. But I also think that it takes the like it sort of takes the
substitute good moral or more moral for more valuable.
Right. Yeah, I mean I get it, but I think it also takes out the connotation, and maybe this is your intention, is it takes out the connotation of morality being associated with like right and wrong in a philosophical sense. Is that what you're going for? Like you're saying, it's like you're saying instead of it being morally right, you would say it has a positive value of X units.
Yeah, but why is something morally right? Generally because it has
right. Well, this is the question, right? Like I think that what we've been saying is you have to define what it is your goal is, right? And your system of redefining morality as value doesn't get us past that hurdle. You can only calculate the value of an action with respect to a goal that you define ahead of time. Right?
Yeah, but yeah, no, and it is, but like I feel like it's the same though. Like when you boil it down to like what morality is, like what I'm trying to get at is like morality. When you boil it down, is like what do you value? Do you
Okay.
value your
Yeah,
religion?
so
Like
okay.
take littering.
So there you go.
Littering
So
for
you're using value to represent two different things, right? You're using value as both the like measure of progress towards a goal, and you're using value in the traditional sense of like what are your values, what are your goals, what do you think is the right thing to do, right? I think you've got an equivocation fallacy going on. I think that's maybe the issue. And I think this would be this would be more obvious to you if you had a discussion with someone who you disagree with, and try this out with them and see if you can, and see where you come up against a wall in that discussion.
Mhm.
Because if you both agree, if you both have the same values at base, then you should be able to convince them of your opinion or whatever, using your system. And if not, then you're going to find out where it is that they differ, and it's probably going to be that they don't agree with your objective, your goal, and they have different values than
Remind me,
you.
what's an equivocation fallacy again?
It's using the same word to mean two different things.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. See,
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily convinced I'm doing that right now.
It's
But
like, for instance,
I could be. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, I was saying, for instance, like I could say that I value my health, but also like I value my computer, and those are different things, right? I'm using value in one sense to mean like my computer is worth some amount of money; it's valuable, and then maybe this is a bad example, but I'm also I value my health because it is a sort of like fundamental thing that allows me to do the things that I want to do. But I'm still using it
Well,
in slightly different ways, right?
not necessarily, because I mean, there's value, monetary value, but like you can value your computer and it can still contribute to your health, because like you can use it to communicate with doctors.
Sure, but again, in this context, I'm talking about specifically, like I could say like my money is valuable. The money in my pocket is valuable, right? It's like it's not valuable in the same sense. But anyway, I don't know, Ben. What do you got? You got anything else on this?
No, I think we've kind of reached as far as we can really go with this conversation. I think that advice is great, and definitely call back in if you've tried this out and have some new thoughts on it, because
Mhm.
I'd love to hear where this goes.
Yeah. Thanks, Gerard. Really good topic. So thanks for calling in.